Stop reacting. Stop explaining. Stop proving who you are. Because the moment you do nothing deliberately, everything around you starts to move. People panic when they can't read you. They reveal themselves when you don't respond. They lose control when you refuse to play. This audiobook is not about laziness. It's about disciplined inaction. The kind of silence that commands rooms. The kind of stillness that makes others expose their weakness. Do nothing, watch carefully, and take back control without lifting a finger. Chapter 1. Stop reacting. That's where you're losing power. Most people think their problem is lack of confidence. It's not. Most people think their problem is fear. It's not. Your real problem is reaction. You react too fast. You react emotionally. You react automatically. And every time you react, you give your power away. You have a choice. You always have a choice. But reaction makes you forget that. The moment someone provokes you and you respond instantly, they win. The moment someone criticizes you and you defend yourself, they win. The moment someone ignores you and you chase clarity, they win. Because whoever reacts first loses. This chapter is not about becoming cold. It's not about becoming distant. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about discipline. It's not about emotion. It's about control. Most people live in stimulus response mode. Something happens, they react. A message arrives, they reply. A comment triggers them, they explain. A tone shifts, they panic. This is not awareness, this is conditioning. And conditioned people are easy to control. Look at real life. An argument starts. The louder person is not the stronger one. They are the weaker one. The calm person isn't calm because they don't care. They are calm because they are in control. You have a choice, react or observe. Reaction feels powerful in the moment, but it always costs you later. Reaction drains energy. Reaction creates regret. Reaction gives information to people who don't deserve access to you. Silence, on the other hand, does something different. Silence creates tension. Silence creates uncertainty. Silence forces the other person to reveal themselves. That's why silence feels uncomfortable at first, because you're used to leaking power through reaction. Let's get practical. Someone disrespects you verbally. Your instinct is to respond immediately. You want to correct them. You want to defend yourself. You want to explain your side. Pause. That pause is power. That pause is the moment you reclaim control over your nervous system. You have a choice. You always have a choice. When you don't react, one of three things happens. First, the other person escalates. That tells you they need control more than truth. Second, they backtrack. That tells you they were testing boundaries. Third, they get uncomfortable. That tells you your silence worked. In all three cases, you win. Reaction is predictable. Silence is unsettling. That's why emotionally intelligent people pause. That's why leaders wait. That's why disciplined people don't rush. It's not about being slow. It's about being intentional. Now let's talk about where reaction shows up most. Relationships. Someone pulls away, you chase. Someone criticizes, you explain. Someone threatens to leave, you negotiate. You think you're saving the relationship. You're not. You're training the other person to control you. Every reaction teaches people how to treat you. You have a choice. Teach them strength or teach them access. At work, it's the same. A coworker throws subtle shade. You confront emotionally. A boss tests your boundaries. You over-justify. A meeting turns tense. You rush to fill silence. And suddenly, you're the reactive one, the anxious one, the predictable one. That's not leadership. That's exposure. Silence doesn't mean submission. Silence means you're gathering data. When you stop reacting, you start seeing patterns. Who talks when you don't? Who gets uncomfortable? Who over-explains? You begin to see who needs validation, who needs control, who needs you to react so they feel powerful. Reaction hides truth. Stillness reveals it. You have a choice, always. Here's the discipline you must build. Delay. Not forever, not avoidance. Delay. Delay your response by seconds, then minutes, then hours when possible. That delay breaks emotional chains. Ask yourself one question before reacting. Is this response necessary or just emotional? Most reactions are emotional. Very few are necessary. When you delay, your body calms, your breathing steadies, your mind clears. That's when real power returns. This is why strong people appear unbothered. They're not numb, they're disciplined. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about deciding when emotion deserves action. And most of the time, it doesn't. Reaction is loud. Control is quiet. Reaction is impulsive. Discipline is intentional. You have a choice. If someone sends a message designed to provoke you, don't reply immediately. If someone makes a comment meant to test you, don't explain. If someone pushes emotionally, don't push back. Step back. Observe. Let the silence do the work. Because here's the truth most people never realize. People reveal their intentions when you don't interrupt them with reaction. They talk more. They expose more. They lose composure. And the calm one wins. This is not manipulation. This is self-mastery. And self-mastery always comes before influence. If you can't control your reactions, someone else will. That's the cost. So today, you start small. One pause, one delayed response, one moment where you choose discipline over impulse. You have a choice, and that choice determines your power. You stopped reacting. You reclaimed control. Now it's time to understand what silence really does to people when you use it correctly. Chapter 2. Silence is not weakness, it's psychological dominance. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it. They apologize inside it. They explain themselves out of it. Because silence feels like exposure. But silence is not weakness. Silence is control. You have been taught the wrong lesson. You were taught that speaking up equals strength, that defending yourself equals confidence, that being understood equals power. That's a lie. Real power doesn't need to announce itself. Silence unsettles people because it removes their leverage. When you speak, you give information. When you explain, you give access. When you react, you give direction. Silence gives nothing. And when people get nothing, they panic. You have a choice. Fill the space or control it. Think about the last time someone confronted you. An accusation, a passive-aggressive comment, a loaded question. Your instinct was to respond immediately. Why? Because silence feels like losing. But here's the truth. Silence forces the other person to carry the weight of the moment. When you don't respond, they do. They talk more. They justify. They over-explain. They reveal insecurity. Silence creates imbalance, and imbalance creates dominance. This is why skilled negotiators use silence. This is why confident leaders pause before speaking. This is why emotionally strong people don't rush. It's not about ego, it's about composure. You have a choice: react or remain grounded. Silence doesn't mean you agree. Silence means you are evaluating, and evaluation is power. Let's get real. In arguments, the person who talks the most usually loses. They expose emotion. They expose need. They expose instability. The calm one listens. The calm one watches. The calm one decides when and if to speak. Silence is not passive. It's active restraint. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. You see, weak people need noise. They need reassurance. They need validation. They need immediate feedback. Silence deprives them of all three. That's why silence makes manipulators uncomfortable, because manipulation requires reaction. No reaction, no control. You have a choice. Let's talk about real-world application. Someone criticizes you publicly. Instead of defending yourself, you pause. You look at them. You say nothing. What happens? They feel exposed. Others notice the imbalance. The critic suddenly looks emotional. You didn't win by speaking. You won by standing still. At work, silence signals authority. When a leader speaks less, people listen more. When a leader pauses before answering, people assume depth. When a leader doesn't rush to clarify, people adjust their behavior. It's not about ego, it's about presence. Silence creates presence. Now let's address the fear. You fear silence because you think people will misinterpret it. Good. Let them. You don't need to control perception. You need to control yourself. It's not about being liked. It's about being respected. And respect comes from boundaries, not explanations. You have a choice. Most people overtalk because they are trying to manage other people's emotions. That's not your job. Your job is to manage your own. Silence is how you stop emotional labor. Silence is how you stop carrying conversations that drain you. Silence is how you stop negotiating your worth. Let's talk about timing. Silence is most powerful immediately after provocation. That moment when someone expects a response. That's when you pause. Not dramatically, not theatrically, calmly. Neutral face, relaxed body, steady breathing. This signals confidence at a subconscious level. People feel it before they understand it. And when you finally speak, if you choose to, your words land heavier, because silence amplifies impact. It's not about saying less forever. It's about saying less strategically. Silence is the space where you regain leverage. Now understand this. Silence doesn't mean avoidance. It means delayed response with intention. Avoidance runs away. Silence stands firm. You are not disappearing. You are observing. You are not backing down. You are choosing your moment. You have a choice. Here's the discipline to practice. When challenged, wait 3 seconds before responding. When emotional, wait longer. When uncertain, say nothing. Let the silence stretch. Most people will fill it for you, and what they say next tells you everything you need to know. This is where power shifts, because people reveal themselves when they are uncomfortable. Silence makes them uncomfortable. You are not responsible for their discomfort. You are responsible for your discipline. Silence also protects you. It protects you from saying things you'll regret. It protects you from giving information to the wrong people. It protects your emotional energy. Reaction leaks power. Silence seals it. You have a choice. Remember this: the loudest person is rarely the strongest. The calmest person often controls the room, not because they dominate, but because they don't need to. Silence is confidence without performance. Silence is authority without force. Silence is dominance without aggression. Master it, because once you stop reacting and once you understand the power of silence, you unlock the next level. You stop talking, you start watching. And when you watch carefully, you notice something most people miss. People always tell you who they are if you let them. Chapter 3. Let people show you who they are. Don't interrupt them. Most people don't hide who they are. They reveal it. Slowly, consistently, predictably. The problem is, you keep interrupting the reveal. You explain too early. You forgive too fast. You confront before observing. And every time you do, you block the truth. You have a choice. Always. Interrupt or observe. People show you who they are through patterns, not words. But patterns require time, and time requires stillness. When you react, you shorten the process. When you explain, you contaminate the data. When you confront emotionally, you give them a mask. Silence removes the mask. That's why silence is uncomfortable for liars, manipulators, and insecure people, because they can't hide in quiet. You have a choice. Most people listen to promises. Disciplined people watch behavior. Someone says they care, but they disappear when it's inconvenient. Someone says they respect you, but they cross boundaries casually. Someone says they've changed, but their actions repeat. That's not confusion, that's clarity, if you don't interrupt it. When you confront too early, you give people the chance to adjust their story. They apologize, they justify, they perform remorse, and suddenly you're confused again. Not because the truth disappeared, but because you interfered with it. You have a choice. Let's talk about relationships. Early red flags don't disappear. They go quiet when challenged, and then they return, stronger. When someone shows inconsistency, don't interrogate, observe. When someone disrespects a boundary, don't lecture, note it. When someone withdraws effort, don't chase, pause. The silence creates space, and in that space, people reveal priorities. Who shows up without being chased? Who respects boundaries without reminders? Who changes behavior instead of offering words? That's the truth. And truth doesn't need confrontation, it needs patience. You have a choice. Most people rush to clarity. They want answers now, certainty now, reassurance now. But rushed clarity is often false clarity, because people will say anything to regain control. Silence takes control away from them. When you stop explaining yourself, stop reminding, stop rescuing conversations, people behave naturally. And natural behavior is honest behavior. This applies everywhere. At work, watch who takes credit. Watch who deflects blame.
Watch who communicates only when they need something. Don't call it out immediately. Let the pattern complete itself. Patterns don't lie. Reaction creates drama. Observation creates wisdom. You have a choice. Most people think confrontation equals strength. Sometimes it does, but premature confrontation is weakness disguised as courage. It says, I can't sit with uncertainty. Strong people can. Strong people let the story unfold. Because when people think you're not watching, they act honestly. Silence is not ignorance, it's surveillance. You're not passive, you're gathering evidence. This is where emotional maturity begins, not in reacting, but in restraint. Now understand this clearly. Letting people show who they are does not mean tolerating disrespect indefinitely. It means delaying reaction until truth is undeniable. Then action becomes clean, decisive, final. You don't argue, you don't debate, you don't negotiate, you act. That's power. You have a choice. Here's the discipline you must build. When something feels off, don't fix it, don't name it, don't chase explanation. Watch it repeat. 1 time is noise, 2 is coincidence, 3 times is character. And character always wins over words. This discipline protects you from manipulation. Manipulators rely on urgency. They rush you to decide. They rush you to forgive. They rush you to react. Silence breaks urgency. Stillness exposes intent. If someone truly respects you, silence won't scare them. They'll remain consistent. If someone needs control, silence will agitate them. They'll push, they'll provoke, they'll test harder. That's information, and information is leverage. You have a choice. Stop trying to be understood by everyone. Your job is not to convince, your job is to discern. People don't need explanations to reveal themselves. They just need space, and silence creates space. Most betrayals don't happen suddenly. They happen gradually while you're busy explaining, forgiving, and reacting. Stillness would have shown you everything sooner. This chapter is about trust, but not blind trust. It's about earned trust. Earned through consistency, earned through time, earned through behavior under pressure. Words crumble under pressure. Patterns don't. You have a choice. When someone disappoints you, don't demand answers. Watch what they do next. When someone apologizes, don't rush to accept. Watch what changes. When someone claims loyalty, don't test them verbally. Watch their actions when it costs them something. That's how you protect your energy. That's how you protect your time. That's how you protect your peace. You stopped reacting. You learned the power of silence. Now you let people reveal themselves without interference. And once you see clearly, the next step becomes obvious. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop forcing decisions. You start waiting strategically, because timing is power.
Chapter 4. Doing nothing is not passive, it's strategic waiting. Most people are addicted to movement. They move because they're uncomfortable. They act because they're anxious. They decide because stillness scares them. They confuse motion with progress. But motion without timing is sabotage. Doing nothing, disciplined nothing, is not passive. It's strategic. You have a choice, always. Act too early or wait deliberately. Weak people rush. Strong people wait, not because they're afraid, because they understand timing. Every bad decision you've made shares one thing in common. You moved too soon. You responded too quickly. You committed too early. You forced clarity before it existed. That wasn't courage. That was impatience. It's not about laziness. It's about discipline. Strategic waiting is restraint with awareness. It's watching the board before making a move. In chess, amateurs attack early. Professionals develop position. Why? Because position creates leverage. Life works the same way. When you rush, you give up leverage. When you wait, leverage comes to you. You have a choice. Let's talk about pressure. Pressure makes people move. Silence removes pressure from you and transfers it to them. When you don't decide immediately, others feel the tension. They reveal urgency. They reveal desperation. They reveal motivation. That's information, and information is power. Most people act to relieve discomfort. They respond just to end the tension. They decide just to stop thinking. They say yes just to avoid conflict. That's not leadership. That's avoidance. Doing nothing intentionally keeps the discomfort where it belongs. Not on you, on them. You have a choice. Look at negotiations. The first person to rush loses. The one who waits sets the frame. Silence during negotiation is not confusion, it's dominance. You're saying, "I'm not pressured by your urgency," and that changes the dynamic immediately. In relationships, it's the same. Someone pulls away. Your instinct is to fix it. You text, you call, you seek reassurance, and now you're chasing. But when you wait calmly, something shifts. Either they return with effort or they don't. Both outcomes give clarity. Chasing delays truth. Waiting accelerates it. You have a choice. Strategic waiting is about trusting your stability. If you need constant movement, you don't trust yourself. If you can sit in uncertainty, you're grounded. Grounded people don't force outcomes. They allow outcomes to reveal themselves. This does not mean you never act. It means you act when the moment is clean, when emotion settles, when information completes, when leverage is clear. Stillness sharpens judgment. Reaction clouds it. You have a choice. Let's talk about timing errors. Most people speak when they should wait, commit when they should observe, leave when they should pause, and then they wonder why life feels chaotic. Chaos comes from impatience. Strategic waiting creates order. Because when you wait, you see consequences before they arrive. You see who panics. You see who pressures. You see who respects space. That tells you everything. Waiting doesn't weaken you. Waiting filters. It filters weak opportunities, weak people, weak decisions. Only what's solid survives stillness. You have a choice. Here's the discipline you must practice. When faced with pressure, do nothing. Not forever, just long enough to see clearly. When someone rushes you, pause. When emotions spike, pause longer. When stakes are high, slow down. Speed is for execution. Stillness is for decisions. Most people reverse that and pay for it. It's not about hesitation, it's about precision. Stillness is where precision is built. This is why disciplined people appear calm in chaos. They are not frozen, they are evaluating. They are not confused, they are waiting for alignment. They are not passive, they are positioning. You have a choice. Strategic waiting also builds respect. People respect those who are not easily moved, who don't jump at every opportunity, who don't panic under pressure, who don't chase validation. Stillness signals value. If you are valuable, you don't rush. If you rush, you signal scarcity. Scarcity repels, stability attracts. This applies to money, to relationships, to career, to identity. The more desperate the move, the weaker the position. Stillness reverses that. Now, understand this clearly. Doing nothing does not mean avoiding responsibility. It means delaying action until it becomes obvious. When action is obvious, it's clean. No doubt, no regret, no emotional residue. You don't argue, you don't justify, you move, and people feel the certainty. That's power. You have a choice. Most people feel behind in life because they move too fast. They confuse speed with success, but speed without direction leads nowhere faster. Stillness gives direction. Direction gives momentum. Momentum gives results. This chapter is about patience, but not passive patience. It's active observation. You are watching behavior, watching timing, watching alignment. And when the moment arrives, you act decisively. One move, clean execution, no noise, no explanation. You stopped reacting. You learned silence. You observed behavior. Now you wait strategically. And when you wait, something interesting happens. People feel your absence. They notice your withdrawal. They feel the loss of access. And that's when real power shifts.
Chapter 5. Your absence speaks louder than your presence. Most people try to gain power by showing up more. They talk more, they give more, they explain more, they stay longer than they should, and they wonder why they feel ignored, undervalued, and drained. Presence does not create value. Scarcity does. Your absence is louder than your presence when it is intentional. You have a choice, always. Be constantly available or be respected. People don't appreciate what they can access endlessly. They adjust to it. They take it for granted. They stop noticing it. That includes your time, your energy, your emotional labor. When you are always there, you become invisible. When you step back, the space you leave becomes noticeable. That space creates awareness. Awareness creates respect. It's not about manipulation. It's about boundaries. It's not about disappearing dramatically. It's about withdrawing strategically. You have a choice. Look at your life. Who gets unlimited access to you? Who drains you without consequence? Who assumes you'll always respond, always help, always explain? That's not coincidence. That's training. You trained them through availability. Every time you stayed when you should have stepped back, every time you replied when silence was better, every time you gave more after receiving less. Access is power, and you've been giving it away. You have a choice. Your absence forces recalibration. When you stop showing up emotionally, people feel the difference. They feel the loss of attention. They feel the loss of validation. They feel the loss of control. That discomfort reveals priorities. Those who value you will adjust their behavior. Those who only valued access will complain, guilt, or provoke. Both responses give clarity. Presence hides truth. Absence reveals it. This is especially important in relationships. If someone only values you when you're available, they don't value you. they value the benefit. When you step back and effort disappears, that was never connection, it was convenience. You have a choice. Stop trying to maintain closeness through overgiving. That's not love, that's fear. Love respects boundaries, fear erases them. Your absence tests sincerity, and sincerity survives distance. If someone respects you, your absence won't trigger games. If someone needs control, your absence will trigger panic. That panic is information, and information is power. You have a choice. At work, this principle is even clearer. When you stop overperforming without recognition, people notice. When you stop solving problems that aren't yours, systems expose themselves. When you stop volunteering for emotional labor, dynamics shift. You don't announce withdrawal, you just adjust availability. And suddenly, people either step up or reveal dependency. Both outcomes benefit you. Absence is not punishment, it's feedback. It tells people access is earned. Most people never use this tool because they're afraid of being forgotten, afraid of losing relevance, afraid of being replaced. That fear keeps them trapped. But here's the truth. If your presence is the only thing holding something together, it's already broken. Real value doesn't vanish when you step back. It becomes clearer. You have a choice. Let's be practical. You don't need to disappear completely. You reduce availability. You shorten responses. You delay replies. You stop initiating. You stop being the emotional glue. And then you watch. Who reaches out with effort? Who adjusts behavior? Who respects the boundary without explanation? That's who deserves your presence. Everyone else was feeding off access. This is not coldness. This is discernment. It's not about revenge. It's about self-respect. Your absence also recalibrates you. It gives you space to breathe, to think, to regain emotional balance. Overexposure weakens judgment. Distance restores clarity. That's why you think better when you step away. That's why emotions settle when you stop engaging. That's why power returns when you stop chasing. You have a choice. Many people stay present because they confuse being needed with being valued. They are not the same. Being needed feels important. Being valued feels secure. Need creates dependency. Value creates respect. Absence breaks unhealthy dependency, and unhealthy dependency always collapses, eventually. Better to step back early than explode later. This chapter is about reclaiming your time, your energy, your nervous system. You don't owe constant access to anyone. You don't owe explanations for boundaries. You don't owe availability as proof of worth. Your worth exists with or without presence. You have a choice. When you remove access, people adjust their behavior or remove themselves. Both outcomes are clean. No drama, no confrontation, no emotional chaos. Just clarity. And clarity is freedom. Remember this. People fight harder for what they might lose than for what they already have. Your absence creates the possibility of loss, and loss commands attention. This is why silence works, why waiting works, why absence works. They all remove access, and access is the real currency of power. You stopped reacting. You learned silence. You observed patterns. You waited strategically. Now you removed access.
And once access is gone, something changes inside you. You stop explaining. You stop justifying. You stop defending your boundaries. Because confident people don't clarify their worth. That's the next discipline.
Chapter 6. Stop explaining yourself. Confident people don't clarify. Most people talk too much. They explain their choices. They justify their boundaries. They clarify their intentions. Not because it's necessary, but because they're seeking permission. Explanation is often disguised insecurity. Confident people don't clarify. They decide. You have a choice. Always. Explain to be understood, or act and let results speak. When you explain yourself unnecessarily, you send a message. You say, I need you to agree with me. You say, I'm not sure I'm allowed to do this. You say, please validate my decision. That's not confidence. That's negotiation. And power is never negotiated from a weak position. It's not about arrogance. It's about certainty. Certainty doesn't require explanation. Look at leaders. They don't over-explain direction. They don't defend decisions emotionally. They don't chase consensus after clarity. They state, they move, they let outcomes prove them right. You have a choice. Every unnecessary explanation dilutes authority. Every justification opens debate, and debate invites resistance. When you explain too much, people stop listening to what you decided and start questioning why. That's where control shifts away from you. Silence protects authority. Brevity reinforces it. You don't owe clarity to everyone. You owe clarity to yourself. Most explanations are not for communication. They're for comfort. You're trying to make others comfortable with your boundary. That's backwards. Boundaries are not requests. They are statements. You have a choice. Let's talk about real life. You say no to a request. Immediately, you feel pressure to explain. You list reasons. You apologize. You soften your tone. And suddenly, your no sounds like a maybe. Confident people say no and stop. Not aggressively, not defensively. Calmly. I won't be able to do that. Silence. That silence does the work. Explanations invite counterarguments. Silence ends negotiation. It's not about being rude. It's about being clear. Clarity without confidence still sounds weak. Confidence without explanation sounds final. You have a choice. In relationships, explanations are often traps. You explain why you need space, they argue your reasons. You explain why something hurt you, they minimize it. You explain your boundary, they push it. Why? Because explanation turns boundaries into discussions. Boundaries are not discussions. They are limits. And limits don't need approval. If someone respects you, they won't demand justification. If they demand justification, they don't respect the boundary. That's information, and information is power. You have a choice. Stop oversharing. Oversharing is not honesty. It's anxiety. You're trying to preempt judgment by exposing everything. But the more you expose, the more people feel entitled to an opinion. Privacy is power. Silence is power. Brevity is power. You don't need to explain your pace, your standards, your distance. Those who belong will adjust. Those who don't will resist. Both outcomes are useful. You have a choice. Let's talk about tone. Explanations often come with emotional leakage. Your voice softens.
Your posture collapses. Your energy drops. That's not communication. That's submission. Confidence is neutral. Steady tone, few words, no rush. I've decided. This works for me. I'm not available. Stop. Nothing after that improves the message. Silence lets the message settle. This discipline takes practice. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. You'll want to fill the space. Don't. Sit in it. Discomfort is temporary. Authority lasts. You have a choice. Notice how people react when you stop explaining. Some will respect it immediately. Some will push harder. Those who push harder were benefiting from your over-explaining. You don't owe them comfort. You owe yourself consistency. Consistency builds credibility. Credibility builds authority. Authority ends arguments before they start. It's not about being mysterious. It's about being grounded. You don't need to narrate your life. You don't need to justify your growth. You don't need to convince anyone you've changed. Change is proven by behavior, not explanation. You have a choice. This chapter is about self-trust. When you trust yourself, you don't over-communicate. When you doubt yourself, you talk more. Silence is the byproduct of certainty. If you find yourself explaining, pause and ask, am I explaining for clarity or approval? If it's approval, stop. Approval is a trap. It gives others veto power over your decisions. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need permission to withdraw. You don't need permission to change. Confident people don't clarify. They move, and others adjust. This chapter locks in something critical. You removed access. You stopped explaining. Now people can't predict you as easily. And unpredictability, when grounded in calm, is threatening to insecure minds. Because what they can't predict, they can't control. That's where the next level begins.
Chapter 7. People fear what they cannot predict or control. Predictability is comfortable, and comfort kills respect. When people can predict you, they manage you. When they manage you, they control you. You don't lose power because you're weak. You lose power because you're readable. You have a choice, always. Remain predictable or remain sovereign. Predictable people are easy. They always reply, they always explain, they always react the same way. That reliability feels kind, but it invites manipulation. People don't fear strength, they fear unpredictability, because unpredictability removes leverage. When others don't know how you'll respond, they hesitate. Hesitation is power. You have a choice. This chapter is not about becoming chaotic. Chaos is insecurity. This is about emotional neutrality. Calm, steady, unrushed, but not easily read. When your reactions are controlled, people can't map you. And when they can't map you, they can't play you. Look at social dynamics. People test boundaries early. They push lightly. They tease. They provoke. If you react the same way every time, they learn. They learn how far they can go. They learn what triggers you. They learn how to get attention. Predictability trains disrespect. Stillness disrupts it. You have a choice. When someone tries to provoke you, don't give them a script. Sometimes you respond briefly. Sometimes you don't respond at all. Sometimes you change the subject. Sometimes you walk away. Not emotionally, not dramatically, calmly. This breaks expectation, and broken expectations reset power. People don't fear loud reactions. They fear calm ones they can't decode. Calm says, I'm not emotionally dependent on this outcome. That's terrifying to insecure minds. You have a choice. At work, predictable people get managed. Their bosses know how to pressure them. Their co-workers know how to dump work on them. Their clients know how to rush them. Unpredictable but stable people set the tempo. They don't rush. They don't react. They don't chase. Others adapt. This is not manipulation. This is self-possession. You are not hiding. You are not playing games. You are simply not volunteering emotional data. That data is used against you more often than you realize. You have a choice. Emotional consistency does not mean emotional transparency. You can be grounded without being open. You can be calm without being accessible. You can be kind without being controllable. Predictable kindness becomes entitlement. Boundaried calm becomes respect. Now understand this. People who need to control others hate uncertainty. They need to know where you stand, what you feel, what you'll tolerate. When you don't give them that map, they become uneasy. They push harder, and that's when you learn everything. Uncertainty exposes insecurity. If someone reacts aggressively to your calm unpredictability, they were invested in controlling you. That's clarity. You have a choice. Stop announcing your next move. Stop explaining your pace. Stop responding on demand. Your life is not a public schedule. Your emotions are not a shared resource. Your reactions are not owed. Silence plus stability creates presence. Presence creates authority. Authority creates freedom. Most people think being predictable makes them trustworthy. It doesn't. Consistency builds trust. Predictability invites control. Consistency is about values. Predictability is about reactions. Be consistent in values, unpredictable in response. That balance is power. You have a choice. Let's talk about fear. People fear what they cannot anticipate, not because it's dangerous, but because it's uncontrollable. When your emotions are not easily triggered, you become uncontrollable. That's not arrogance, that's self-regulation. Self-regulation is the highest form of power. It means no one can hijack your mood. No one can force a reaction. That's sovereignty. You have a choice. Practice this. Respond differently than expected, but calmly. Not to confuse, to detach. Detach from scripts others assign you. You're not the always available one anymore. You're not the always agreeable one anymore. You're not the always emotional one anymore. You are grounded. Grounded people are hard to control. This chapter is about reclaiming autonomy. When people don't know how to pull your strings, they stop trying. And when they stop trying, peace returns. You stopped reacting. You mastered silence. You observed patterns. You waited strategically. You removed access. You stopped explaining. Now you are no longer predictable. And that's when control shifts fully back to you. But there's a final trap. Even grounded people can lose power if they chase control too hard. Because the harder you try to control outcomes, the faster you lose leverage. That's the paradox. And that's what we address next.
Chapter 8. The more you chase control, the faster you lose it. Most people think control is something you grab. They tighten, they manage, they manipulate outcomes. And in doing so, they expose fear. Control chased is control lost. You have a choice. Always. Grip harder or let go strategically. The paradox is simple. The more you try to control people, situations, and outcomes, the more they resist you. Resistance creates friction. Friction creates instability. Instability erodes power. Real control comes from non-attachment. When you don't need an outcome, you're in control. When you need it, you're not. You have a choice. Look at relationships. The moment someone senses you need them to behave a certain way, the balance shifts. You monitor, you pressure, you negotiate, and suddenly they lead the emotional tempo. Detachment reverses that. When you stop needing them to act right, they either do or they reveal they never would. Both outcomes give you control. Because control is not forcing behavior, it's choosing your response. You have a choice. At work, people who micromanage lose authority. They chase perfection, they chase outcomes, they chase control, and people resist quietly. The leader who lets go, strategically, builds loyalty and respect. Not because they're careless, because they trust process. Trust communicates strength. Desperation communicates weakness. You have a choice. Most people chase control because they fear uncertainty. They want guarantees. They want reassurance. They want closure. But closure cannot be forced. Closure arrives when you stop chasing it. This applies to arguments, relationships, and personal identity. When you chase clarity, you look needy. When you allow ambiguity, you look grounded. Grounded people are magnetic. Needy people repel. You have a choice. Let's talk about emotional control. Trying to suppress emotion is still chasing control. True control is regulation, not repression. You acknowledge the emotion, you don't act on it. That's mastery. When you stop fighting your feelings, they lose power over you. When you stop needing others to validate you, they lose leverage. This chapter is about surrendering false control to gain real control. False control demands, real control allows. False control panics, real control waits. False control explains, real control moves in silence. You have a choice. Observe your behavior. Where are you gripping too tightly? A relationship you're overthinking, a situation you're forcing, an outcome you're chasing. That grip is fear. Release it. Not emotionally, strategically. Release the need for a specific result. And watch how the dynamic shifts. People either move towards you or away from you. Both directions clarify reality. Clarity is power. You have a choice. The calmest person in the room controls the room. Not because they dominate, because they don't chase. When you don't chase approval, respect follows. When you don't chase answers, truth appears. When you don't chase control, influence increases. Influence is the real currency. Control is crude. Influence is subtle. Influence lasts longer. This is why leaders don't beg compliance. They set standards. Those who align stay. Those who don't leave. No argument, no drama, just direction. You have a choice. Most people exhaust themselves trying to manage variables they can't control. Other people's emotions, other people's decisions, other people's reactions. That's wasted energy. Control what you can. Your pace, your boundaries, your presence. Everything else will respond. Life adjusts to the grounded, not the frantic. This chapter teaches emotional economy. Stop spending energy where you have no leverage. Spend it where you do. Self-regulation, disciplined silence, strategic absence, these are leverage points. You have a choice. When you let go of forcing outcomes, you become lighter. Clearer, more decisive. Decisions become cleaner because they're not driven by fear. And when fear leaves, authority arrives. You stopped reacting. You mastered silence. You observed patterns. You waited.
You removed access. You stopped explaining. You became unpredictable. You released the need to control. Now there's one final test. When you are calm, grounded, and detached, weak people become uncomfortable. They project, they provoke, they collapse. And you must learn to stand still while they do. That's the final discipline.
Chapter 9. Stillness makes weak people uncomfortable, and that's the point. When you stop reacting, something happens. When you stop explaining, something shifts. When you stop chasing control, something breaks. Weak people become uncomfortable. Not because you attacked them, not because you challenged them, but because your stillness exposes them. You have a choice, always. Shrink to make others comfortable, or stand still and stay grounded. Weakness needs noise. It needs reassurance. It needs validation. It needs reaction. Stillness deprives it of oxygen. That's why calm people are often misunderstood. They're called cold, arrogant, detached. Those labels are defense mechanisms. People don't label what they understand. They label what threatens their control. You have a choice. Stillness acts like a mirror. It reflects insecurity back to the insecure. When someone provokes you and you don't respond emotionally, they feel exposed. When someone gossips and you don't engage, they feel irrelevant. When someone pushes boundaries and you don't flinch, they feel powerless. That discomfort is not your responsibility. It's feedback. Stillness doesn't create insecurity, it reveals it. You have a choice. Most people collapse under projection. They try to explain themselves when misunderstood. They rush to soften boundaries when labeled harshly. They adjust their behavior to manage others' emotions. That's where power leaks out. Stillness means you let people misunderstand you, not because you don't care, but because you trust truth to outlast noise. Weak people need immediate emotional resolution. Strong people can sit in ambiguity. Ambiguity is threatening to those who need control. You have a choice. Watch what happens when you remain calm under pressure. Some people respect it instantly. Some people escalate. Some people implode. The ones who escalate were depending on your reaction. The ones who implode were hiding insecurity. Either way, you gain clarity. Stillness sorts people quickly. This chapter is about endurance, the ability to remain centered while others lose composure. This is the highest form of discipline, because nothing tempts you to react like provocation. Insults, misunderstandings, false assumptions. Your ego will beg you to respond. Don't. You have a choice. Responding emotionally doesn't prove strength, it proves you were touched. Silence proves you were unaffected, and being unaffected is threatening. That's why weak people push harder when you don't react. Chapter 9. Stillness makes weak people uncomfortable, and that's the point. When you stop reacting, something happens. When you stop explaining, something shifts. When you stop chasing control, something breaks. Weak people become uncomfortable. Not because you attacked them, not because you challenged them, but because your stillness exposes them. You have a choice, always. Shrink to make others comfortable, or stand still and stay grounded. Weakness needs noise. It needs reassurance. It needs validation.
It needs reaction. Stillness deprives it of oxygen. That's why calm people are often misunderstood. They're called cold, arrogant, detached. Those labels are defense mechanisms. People don't label what they understand. They label what threatens their control. You have a choice. Stillness acts like a mirror. It reflects insecurity back to the insecure. When someone provokes you and you don't respond emotionally, they feel exposed. When someone gossips and you don't engage, they feel irrelevant. When someone pushes boundaries and you don't flinch, they feel powerless. That discomfort is not your responsibility. It's feedback. Stillness doesn't create insecurity, it reveals it. You have a choice. Most people collapse under projection. They try to explain themselves when misunderstood. They rush to soften boundaries when labeled harshly. They adjust their behavior to manage others' emotions. That's where power leaks out. Stillness means you let people misunderstand you, not because you don't care, but because you trust truth to outlast noise. Weak people need immediate emotional resolution. Strong people can sit in ambiguity. Ambiguity is threatening to those who need control. You have a choice. Watch what happens when you remain calm under pressure. Some people respect it instantly. Some people escalate. Some people implode. The ones who escalate were depending on your reaction. The ones who implode were hiding insecurity. Either way, you gain clarity. Stillness sorts people quickly. This chapter is about endurance, the ability to remain centered while others lose composure. This is the highest form of discipline, because nothing tempts you to react like provocation. Insults, misunderstandings, false assumptions. Your ego will beg you to respond. Don't. You have a choice. Responding emotionally doesn't prove strength. It proves you were touched. Silence proves you were unaffected. And being unaffected is threatening. That's why weak people push harder when you don't react. They need confirmation. They need to know they can still move you. When they can't, panic sets in. Stay still. Let them reveal themselves. Stillness is not passive, it's anchored. Anchored people don't sway with every wind. They don't chase perception. They don't manage rumors. They don't fight shadows. They remain. And in remaining, they outlast. You have a choice. Let's talk about emotional bait. People will try to pull you into drama. They'll exaggerate, they'll accuse, they'll provoke publicly. Not because they're right, but because they need reaction to feel powerful. Don't give it to them. Not out of spite, out of discipline. Your silence starves their need. Eventually, they move on, or they expose themselves fully. Either outcome benefits you. You have a choice. Stillness also protects your nervous system. Constant reaction keeps your body in fight or flight. Stillness returns you to baseline. Calm breathing, relaxed posture, clear thinking. From that state, your decisions are precise. From chaos, decisions are compromised. Weak people live in chaos. They need it. You don't. This chapter is also about identity. When you stop reacting to labels, they lose meaning. You are not defined by accusations, not defined by misunderstandings, not defined by others' projections. You are defined by consistency. Consistency outlives noise. You have a choice. Remember this: Strong people don't need to be understood by everyone. They need to be aligned with themselves. Alignment creates peace. Peace creates presence. Presence creates authority. Authority doesn't argue. It doesn't chase. It doesn't explain. It stands. And when you stand long enough, the world adjusts. This is why calm leaders rise. This is why grounded individuals are respected. This is why silence outlasts shouting. Stillness is not absence. It is presence without performance. You have a choice. Let others spiral. Let others project. Let others misunderstand. You remain still, because the one who remains composed when others fall apart holds the real power. This chapter completes the external work. You've learned how others react to your discipline. Now comes the final truth. The one thing all of this was building towards. It was never about controlling others. It was always about mastering yourself. And when you do that fully, everything else adjusts automatically. That's the final chapter.
Chapter 10. Master yourself, and the world adjusts automatically. Everything you've learned so far points to one truth. It was never about them. Not their behavior, not their reactions, not their respect. It was always about you. Self-mastery is the source of all power. Without it, every technique fails. With it, everything works. You have a choice. Always. Try to control the world, or master yourself and let the world respond. Most people live externally. They react to tone. They react to pressure. They react to approval and rejection. Their emotions are leased out to circumstances. That's not living. That's surrender. Self-mastery is reclaiming ownership of your inner state. When you master yourself, you become unmovable. And when you are unmovable, everything else moves. You have a choice. Let's connect the dots. When you stopped reacting, you regained control of your nervous system. When you embraced silence, you reclaimed leverage. When you observed instead of interrupting, you gained clarity. When you waited strategically, timing worked in your favor. When you removed access, respect recalibrated. When you stopped explaining, authority returned. When you became unpredictable but grounded, manipulation failed. When you released the need to control, influence increased. When you stayed still while others unraveled, power consolidated. All of that is self-mastery. Not dominance over others, dominance over impulses. You have a choice. Most people think confidence is loud. It's not. Confidence is regulated emotion. It's knowing you don't need to prove anything. It's knowing you can walk away, wait, remain silent, and be fine. That's freedom. When you are free internally, people sense it. They adjust their behavior automatically, not because you demanded it, but because self-mastery commands respect at a subconscious level. People feel stability, and humans are drawn to stability. You have a choice. Look at your past. Every time you lost power, you lost yourself first. You got emotional. You got rushed. You got reactive. And the moment you did, the balance shifted. Self-mastery prevents that, because when you master yourself, no one can hijack you. They can provoke, but you choose. They can pressure,
but you decide. They can misunderstand, but you remain. You have a choice. This chapter is not about perfection. It's about consistency. You won't always be calm. You won't always choose silence. But mastery is returning to center faster each time. Shorter reactions, longer pauses, cleaner decisions. That's progress. Self-mastery is a practice, not a performance. You don't announce it, you don't display it, you live it. And over time, people stop testing you, because tests fail against stability. You have a choice. Let's talk about identity. When you master yourself, you stop asking, "What do they think of me?" And you start asking, "Am I aligned with myself?" That shift changes everything. You stop negotiating your values. You stop explaining your growth. You stop shrinking to maintain connection. You become congruent. Congruence is magnetic. It's when your actions, boundaries, and energy align. People trust congruent individuals, even if they don't like them. And trust is power. You have a choice. Self-mastery also simplifies life. Drama fades. Noise reduces. Decisions become obvious. You don't overthink because you don't overreact. You don't second-guess because you don't chase validation. You move cleanly, or not at all. That clarity creates momentum, and momentum compounds. This is why disciplined people appear lucky. They're not. They're aligned. You have a choice. Here's the final discipline. Before every reaction, pause. Before every decision, center. Before every word, ask, "Is this necessary?" Not to restrict yourself, but to protect your energy. Energy spent on reaction is energy stolen from creation. When you master yourself, you reclaim that energy, and you use it to build your life, your standards, your future. You don't need to dominate rooms. You need to dominate your impulses. That's where real power lives. You have a choice. Understand this deeply. The world does not respond to what you demand. It responds to what you tolerate. When you tolerate chaos internally, chaos surrounds you. When you cultivate calm internally, calm reorganizes your environment. Life mirrors self-mastery. That's the final truth. You never needed to change everyone else. You needed to change how accessible you were to your own impulses. Once you did that, everything adjusted. This chapter completes the work. You are no longer reactive, no longer explainable, no longer controllable. You are grounded, and grounded people don't chase outcomes. They allow outcomes to come to them. Now it's time to seal this lesson. Not softly, not gently, but decisively. Let's bring it all together.
You don't need to react anymore. You don't need to explain anymore. You don't need to chase, control, or prove anything. Because once you master yourself, the world adjusts automatically. You learned that reaction leaks power, that silence creates leverage, that observation reveals truth, that waiting sharpens timing, that absence recalibrates respect, that explanations weaken authority, that unpredictability breaks control, that letting go increases influence, and that stillness exposes weakness. This was never about doing nothing out of fear. It was about disciplined inaction, the kind that makes people uncomfortable, The kind that forces truth to surface. The kind that puts you back in command without effort. You have a choice. You always have a choice. React or remain grounded. Chase or wait. Explain or let results speak. Starting now, pause before you respond. Watch before you act. Withdraw before you explain. Do nothing deliberately. Watch everything clearly. And let the world rearrange itself around the one person it can no longer control. You.